Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and it's time for part 2 of the Q&A, so let's go ahead and get this started. All right, first question. Is it true straps don't strengthen your grip? Now, a lot of times this is one of those that would seem obvious, but you do meet people who've never used straps before, so they're really not aware of this. And that's okay. That's why we need to answer some of these, because there's probably some strap noobs out there. So, no, straps don't improve your grip. We use straps on exercises in which our grip is not going to be strong enough to hold. Now, oftentimes that could be done sometimes to test like a max deadlift to see if your back and everything is strong enough, but I want people to understand that we're going to be stronger with straps anyways. Okay, so that doesn't necessarily mean that you could deadlift that same amount if you just got your grip up. And in other words, if you need straps to deadlift 550, and let's say the most you've pulled is 475 without the straps, it doesn't mean that if you build your grip up to be strong enough to hold 550 that you're going to be able to pull 550 without the straps. Does that make sense? It actually, you are usually stronger with straps, whether your grip allows for it or not. Right? So if your all-out max was 550 and you didn't have any grip problems, if you put straps on, you might pull a little bit more than 550, even though your grip had never given out. But the other thing that they do, of course, is there's going to be exercises where we just simply cannot grip it due to the work sets we're trying to do. And I'm not saying that we should always do this, because obviously a lot of exercises contribute to our grip strength, but there are going to be some to where the positions just simply don't allow for it. Like a snatch grip deadlift, for example. If you have any remotely decent amount of back and posterior chain strength and you're trying to rep a snatch grip deadlift, best of luck to you. You're not going to be able to do it without straps. Right? And especially double overhand, which is what we're going to have to do. And it's almost hard to even try to hook grip it if you hook grip. So we use straps for things like that. But as far as them strengthening your grip, no. If you do a bunch of pulling with straps and don't do any pulling without straps, your grip strength will usually go down. Like, you will lose grip strength. You'll lose grip strength pretty quickly. So again, they shouldn't really just be used all the time, is my opinion. They need to be used sparingly, because grip and forearm is actually important. It is important. I don't care what your training goals are, even guys who are trying to train just for size. Well, now you're going to have to do a bunch of extra forearm work. And generally, the lifting they're doing, they shouldn't need straps. Most of them aren't trying to deadlift, 700 pounds or anything. Just throwing that out there. Usually building the grip up to a reasonable level for most hypertrophy type exercises shouldn't require straps. It really shouldn't. People still choose to do it anyways, and that's their business. I just don't think that it's a wise choice on their part. They're going to end up having to do more work as a result of it, especially when they have crappy forearms and a weak grip and everything else. All right, that's not good. That's not ideal. All right, next question. Why are women not able to build a similar amount of muscle as men? Most would say due to lower test levels, but since test levels have not been proven to be responsible for the growth you see in direct response to training, but rather the amount of muscle you have normally without training, what makes this not possible? Something to do with the structure of the muscles themselves? Thanks. Two answers. Two reasons, and it may not be as pronounced as you think it is. Number one, women have smaller and lighter frames. Okay? Women have smaller and lighter frames. Now, people will jump up and say, well, that's not true, because this chick over here has got massive muscle, like Amanda Lawrence, the powerlifter. Well, she has a man-sized lower body frame. Like, her bone structure itself is the size of a man's. It's genetics. And in her case, she's been able to build muscle accordingly, at least in the lower body. Upper body, maybe not quite as much, although she's pretty jacked up top, too. So what we're looking at with women is the fact of overall bone structure. Now, in terms of even structure, their lower bodies tend to actually scale very well with men. Women build just as much lower body muscle relative to their frame size as men do. They don't have a problem with that. It's upper body muscle and shoulders and everything, and it has to do with less total muscle fibers. They're born with a lower muscle fiber density, partially genetics, partially due to things like exposure to testosterone in utero, testosterone levels during early development in life. Okay, It's a big deal. And usually, I mean, the case is people would say, well, can that be overcome? Sure, it can be overcome with hormones. Meaning super physiological levels of testosterone in women can actually undo that to a large enough degree, or even if the muscle density is there, the muscle fiber density is lower, they can technically hypertrophy it enough to bridge the gap and more than make up for it at the end of the day with androgens. But things like early development in utero and all of that, androgen levels affect all of that, right? They affect all of that even while you're developing in the womb, as far as the muscle fiber density, the skeletal structure size, bone density, stuff like that. But keeping in mind, women gain similar amounts in their lower body relative to their frame size. Just keeping in mind, on average, women have smaller bone structures than men, okay, on average. So if they have the same size frame as you, actually they're going to gain muscle in their lower body just as quickly as a result of training. And so usually we say that women on average gain about half the muscle that men do in the same time frame, but it's overall due to the combination of the smaller bone structure and then a slightly slower growth per unit in the upper body. So it's very little to do with the testosterone. You're actually right. The testosterone levels in those ranges don't really affect how much muscle you gain from training response. They affect how much you carry around whether you train or not. So men just start at a higher starting point in regard to that. But the others, it's different for the upper and lower body, and it has to do with the combination of both overall frame size as well as muscle fiber density. So hopefully that answered your question. Pretty nuanced, and we covered it within just a few minutes. All right, next question, and probably the last question of the week. Hey Jason, I'm a D1 lacrosse player, and our lifting consists of full body workouts 3 days a week, with each day starting with a heavy compound such as clean squat or reverse lunges. The rest of the workout consists of supersets with pretty high volumes and short rest intervals with exercises such as incline dumbbell press and inverted rows. Along with lifting, we have a practice on the field 4 to 5 days a week, along with these full body workouts. I want to keep on progressing on my squat, bench, and deadlift. I'm currently running your novice program and have a 275 for 5 squat, 370 for 5 deadlift, and a 190 for 5 bench. Do you have any suggestions for the split I could run, considering the recovery issues that could arise? The cross workout startup in a few weeks. Excellent. And yes, I have coached some amateur field athletes in my actual coaching, and I absolutely have an answer for you. Yes, you have a strength base, right? You could rep some respectable numbers for 5s. You don't need to be running a novice program probably anymore. You're also a serious athlete. D1 lacrosse player, I'm going to assume you've got decent genetics. Now, considering you've been playing a field sport and have got up to those numbers on a novice program, that's indicative that you aren't scraping the bottom of the bucket in terms of genetics. You know, those couple of things that we know there. So that being said, I would look into conjugate. I would recommend that you run conjugate 3 days a week instead of 4. Now, people will say, well, what does that mean? How do we organize it? You organize it exactly the same. Conjugate is a 4-day-a-week template, right? 4-day-a-week template, but you only go in 3 and you carry the last workout of the week over to the next week. Okay? So you, instead of doing basically the upper, lower with LMDE, you would go upper, lower, then the next week lower, upper, and you would maintain the exact order of the training, but it basically will take you 4 weeks to do a 3-week block. You just spread it out further. And that solution works very, very well for field athletes who have to do a lot of extra conditioning. They have to do a lot of extra practice, a lot of sport-specific training. Now, some people are going to say, well, Jason, you know, the conditioning is a lot. Well, I do a lot of conditioning. Okay, and when I say I do a lot of conditioning, I bet you I do 5 times as much conditioning as some of you think I do. And I do mean that literally. I do a lot of conditioning, and I do the 4-day-a-week conjugate. However, I'm not engaging in sport-specific practice. And, you know, I can largely manage the stress in my life. Now, people say, well, you sit at home all day. Guys, I run 2 businesses. The YouTube is a smaller one. I technically work full-time. I work full-time. And I make well into what would be considered a quite robust full-time income. But my work week is over 40 hours. It is over a 40-hour work week. So I technically do work. It's just not a traditional job. I run a home business. or technically 2 home businesses at this point. So the thing is, I get away with it. But when we're dealing with a field athlete like this with the extra considerations, they're going to need to cut one of those 4 days out every week. And usually when you do that, they will recover just fine, even if they're doing 4 to 5 days a week of practice. So that's what I would recommend. All right, guys, well, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.